She didn't notice the sound, the subtle click of metal against leather, when I tucked it between her tablet and that overpriced perfume she only wears on days she wants to feel powerful. She was too busy rehearsing her pitch in the mirror, again, mouthing each word like it was a spell she had to get just right. She didn't notice that I hadn't spoken all morning, that I hadn't kissed her goodbye, that I hadn't asked what time she'd be home. She barely glanced at me before grabbing her bag and slipping into heels sharp enough to wound. She left the house like she was floating above it, untouchable, rehearsed, pre-approved by someone wealthier than me. The door closed behind her with a softness that made it worse. No slam, no tension, just quiet. I stayed at the window, not to watch her leave, to make sure she actually took the bag. 15 minutes later, I got the notification. Airport lounge Wi-Fi connected. Right on time. She thought she was walking into the most important meeting of her year. And maybe she was, but not for the reasons she thought. Underneath that perfect speech, that pressed blazer, that spreadsheet full of projections and fake smiles, she carried something heavier than all of it. A ring she hadn't worn in months. And a note that said something she'd never forget. But she hadn't read it yet. Not yet. I knew exactly when she'd see it. Not when she sat down. Not when she ordered her sparkling water with lime and adjusted the hem of her skirt like she always does before meetings. No, I knew her routine too well. She wouldn't open the bag until she reached for her tablet. That would be 3 minutes before the pitch. Just enough time for everything to unravel, but not enough time to hide it. I hadn't planned revenge. Not really. I just wanted her to feel something. Anything. The same weight I'd been dragging behind me for months while pretending things were still salvageable. She hadn't worn her ring since March. Said it felt tight. She'd started saying a lot of things that didn't sound like her. She began calling our house the place, our friends your friends. And me? She didn't say my name unless someone else was listening. I kept asking myself when it started, when exactly I lost her, but the truth is, I think she began slipping away while sitting next to me. Laughing, texting, sleeping. It didn't take a dramatic exit. She just ghosted from within. But that note would haunt her. Because it was just a single sentence. And not the one you're thinking. Not, I know everything. Not, I saw the messages. Not, you broke me. It was 7 plain words, the kind she'd have to reread 3 times to believe they were real. I imagined her hands trembling slightly, though she'd try to act like they weren't. I imagined her heart skipping, not out of guilt, but because control had always been her currency, and this was a hole in the bottom of her bag. And somewhere, Victor, yes, I knew his name now, was probably fixing his cufflinks, waiting for her to walk in like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. Because she hadn't just found a ring. She had found a reset button, and she wasn't the one who pressed it. I didn't go to work that day. Didn't even pretend to try. I sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, phone on silent. The world outside kept moving. Traffic hummed. The neighbor's dog barked at nothing. The mail carrier dropped a catalog I'd never open. And yet inside our house, everything felt frozen. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just suspended. Like the moment after glass shatters, before it hits the ground. I imagined the exact second she reached into the bag. She'd be standing now, maybe mid-conversation. Or sitting alone in the corner, reviewing talking points she no longer cared about. Her fingers would brush past the tablet, the charger, the lipstick, and then pause. Metal. And paper. I could see her breath catch, the confident expression breaking like fog on glass. Maybe she'd excuse herself, slip into the restroom with shaky hands and that fake, composed posture she's so good at maintaining. And then she'd read the note. She'd see those 7 words, not angry, not accusatory, but final. This is the last time I disappear. That's what I wrote. Not a threat. Not a plea. A statement. Because she thought she'd broken me quietly, by replacing love with strategy, laughter with silence, presence with performance, but I was never truly gone. Until now. She used to say she admired how I stayed grounded, how I never needed attention or applause. But what she really meant was, I was safe, predictable, easy to ignore. She wanted to be seen. I became invisible. And maybe that's why she kept me, like an old hoodie you never wear but won't throw away. I think part of her thought I'd always be there, waiting, enduring, tolerating. But even the most loyal dog eventually stops sitting by the door. I left the ring because it was hers now. Not as a symbol, not as a weapon, just as a reminder. There was a man who tried. A man she made disappear. This time on purpose. And while she stood in some glittering VIP room, faking smiles, wondering if Victor noticed her sudden stillness, I was already halfway across the city, headed somewhere she'd never think to look. The place I went wasn't symbolic. It wasn't our first date spot or a scenic lookout or some dramatic cliff where people go to think deep thoughts. No, I went somewhere no one thinks about anymore. The motel next to the old bowling alley. The one with flickering green neon and vending machines that never give change back. The one we used to pass on our way out of town and laugh at, saying, "Who even stays there?" I checked in under a fake name. Paid in cash. The woman at the front desk didn't care. She didn't even look up, just slid me a key and warned me not to use the bathtub unless I wanted company. Perfect. I didn't bring much. Just a backpack with a pair of jeans, some old t-shirts, a notepad, and the watch she bought me for our anniversary last year. It was expensive. Still ticks perfectly. But lately, the sound of it had started to bother me. It reminded me that time was moving, and we weren't. I laid on the bed fully clothed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, and waited. Waited for the notification. Waited for her to text. Waited for any kind of reaction. But there was nothing. Hour after hour, silence. Not a single call. Not even a "where are you?" And that was worse than rage. Worse than guilt. It meant she either didn't care, or worse, she understood why I left and still couldn't be bothered to say anything. That night, I dreamed about our kitchen. Not in a poetic way. I dreamed I was washing dishes, and she was behind me, talking, but I couldn't hear the words. I just kept scrubbing. Same plate. Over and over. My hands were bleeding, but I didn't stop. I woke up to the sound of a text. 3 words. "Where are you?" No question mark. No babe. No please. Just sterile curiosity. Like she was trying to assess a variable. Like she was calculating damage. I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I did something she never would have expected. I sent her a photo. Of the ring. Sitting alone on the glass table of the motel room. No caption. No explanation. Let her figure out what it meant to sit with silence. Let her do the math this time. I hadn't spoken a word in almost 36 hours. Not to a soul. Not even to myself. The motel room had become its own kind of silence. The kind that doesn't just sit in the air, but gets inside your bloodstream. The TV didn't work. The ceiling fan clicked like a slow metronome. And every once in a while, I'd hear someone shout outside and wonder if maybe I wanted it to be dangerous here. Maybe I was punishing myself. I thought she'd write something after the photo. I expected confusion, accusation, begging, or, at the very least, some cold attempt at manipulation, wrapped in professionalism like everything else she did lately. But again, nothing. And just when I started to believe that she was truly done, that I was nothing but a dent in her otherwise polished image, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not hesitant either. 2 taps, then silence. I didn't move at first. My body literally froze. I don't know if it was dread or disbelief or just plain fear, but for a moment, I considered hiding in the closet like a child. But I stood up. I walked over. I looked through the peephole. Greta. Hair pulled back. No makeup. Hoodie. Leggings. The version of her no one in her boardroom had ever seen. The version I hadn't seen in nearly a year. She wasn't crying. That's what stunned me most. Her face looked clear, almost calm. I opened the door, slowly, like I was afraid she might vanish if I moved too fast. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. She walked past me like she'd been here before, like she belonged in this awful little room with its dusty curtains and nicotine-yellow lampshades. She didn't sit. She stood by the table where the ring still rested, untouched since the photo. She looked at it, not like someone who found a clue, but like someone who already knew what it meant. And then she said it. I deserved worse. Just like that. "No, I'm sorry." No denial. Just those 3 words, and they landed heavier than any fight we ever had. I waited. I wanted her to explain, to admit it, to beg. But she didn't. She just stood there, eyes still on the ring. "Why him?" I finally asked. She flinched. "I don't know," she whispered. "He made me feel sharp again, like I wasn't fading." And that broke something in me. Because all this time I thought she was running toward someone. But really, she was running from me. Or worse, from the version of herself that existed with me. "I gave you everything," I said. Even the silence. I know. The words were too calm. Too measured. Like she had already cried about this alone somewhere I'd never see. Like she'd already made peace with what she'd done and was now offering me only what was left. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I sat back on the bed, suddenly more tired than I'd ever felt. She looked at me. Really looked. For the first time in months. And then she did something I'll never forget. She reached for the ring and left her phone in its place. She left it there like it meant something. Her phone, face down on the table, warm from her hand, still vibrating every few minutes with notifications I didn't recognize, names that didn't matter to me, except now they all felt like suspects. I sat there frozen. My eyes moved to the ring, now gone. My wedding ring, the one that used to leave a pale circle on my finger, now replaced by a rectangle of black glass and unanswered questions. She didn't say goodbye, didn't slam the door, didn't ask me to come back or say she'd change. Just took the ring and vanished into the same silence I had weaponized against her. I guess it hurts differently when it's reflected back at you. I waited 5 minutes before touching it, 10 before turning it over, 15 before unlocking it. No passcode, just swipe up. She wanted me to look, so I did. The home screen background was the same, a picture of the ocean from a vacation we took 3 years ago. But that was the only familiar thing. The apps had changed. The messages, the contacts, everything was cleaner, colder, curated. As if she had built a second version of herself inside this glass, one I was never invited to meet. I tapped on her messages first. I didn't have to scroll far. There was no Victor in her recent conversations, but there was a thread called temporary numbers. That was the first red flag. Inside were a dozen contacts, all labeled with dates instead of names. November 4th, November 16th, December 3rd, 1/20th. Each thread was short, 1 or 2 messages, always late at night. One of them read, "Same place. I can only stay an hour." Another, "Don't wear cologne this time." He noticed. And then another, "He doesn't ask anymore. I think he's gone." That one stopped me. I read it again. That was me she was talking about. Not even pretending to say my name anymore. Just a variable. A ghost. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I just stared at that sentence until it blurred into a meaningless smear of characters. And then I noticed something else. A folder in her notes app, titled simply, "If he finds this." There was one file inside. Just one. I didn't open it right away. Because for the first time since this all began, I wasn't sure I wanted the truth. Because what if it was worse than I imagined? And what if it wasn't? I stared at the file like it could bite me. "If he finds this." That was the title. Not subtle. Not clever. Just terrifying. The kind of label someone uses when they don't plan on you actually finding it. Or maybe when they do, but they want it to feel like an accident. Like they didn't want to say it out loud, so they buried it behind taps and swipes. I opened it. It wasn't long. It wasn't a confession. It was a log. A digital notebook of moments. Lines and fragments and scraps of thought. Most of them about me. But not in the way I expected. He still eats cereal like a kid when he thinks I'm asleep. He talks to the dog in full sentences. I love that. Sometimes I imagine him packing a bag and leaving. Not because I want him to. Just because I wonder if he ever will. I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't the cold-hearted cheat sheet I braced for. It was quiet grief. Distant admiration. Guilt wrapped in routine. He hugged me today, and I didn't hug him back. I don't know why. I wanted to. I just couldn't. My body felt frozen. Further down, I told Victor I couldn't keep doing this. He smiled like he didn't believe me. I hated that he was right. I kept reading. He deserves someone who doesn't flinch when he touches her. And then, one day he's going to leave. Not because of Victor, but because he finally realizes I already did. I dropped the phone. It slid off my leg and landed on the floor with a soft thud. The room spun. I had spent weeks, months, crafting this silent war, preparing my exit, writing my 7 words like they were bullets, and now I didn't know what side I was even on. She hadn't denied it. She hadn't excused it. She had documented it like she was preserving a slow death. Like she knew what she was doing, but couldn't stop herself. And maybe I couldn't either. I looked at the ring again. Suddenly, it didn't feel like closure. It felt like a mirror. All the nights I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. All the times I chose distance because I didn't want to hear the answer. We had both disappeared. We had both left the room long before our bodies did. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. But at some point, I realized her location was still sharing. A blinking blue dot. moving, coming back toward me. And that's when I understood. She hadn't taken the ring for drama. She'd taken it because she still believed in endings that weren't final. I didn't move when the dot stopped moving. I just sat there on the edge of the bed, her phone in one hand, the ring in the other, feeling like I was holding the two sides of a life I didn't know how to reconcile. Then came the knock. Same rhythm, 2 soft taps, but it felt different this time. Not tentative, not cold, just patient. I opened the door. She was holding 2 paper cups. Coffee. One black, one with too much cream mine. She didn't say anything. She just handed it to me and waited. I took it, still warm, and stepped aside again. She walked in like the first time never happened, like the last 24 hours weren't a slow-motion implosion of everything we'd built. We sat in silence for a while. No fireworks, no shouting, just the sound of motel plumbing through the wall and the occasional passing car. Finally, she said, I read the note. The one you left. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to talk about it. Maybe ever. But then she said, quietly, I didn't think you'd actually disappear. I thought you'd stay and punish me slowly, like I deserved. I looked up at her. She wasn't hiding anymore. No filters. No business armor. Just a woman who had made mistakes and finally stopped running from them. I didn't leave to punish you, I said. I left because I didn't think there was anything left to save. She nodded. I thought that too, until I opened my bag and realized I still cared what was in it. I smiled a little, not because it fixed anything, but because for the first time in a long time, we were finally speaking the same language. We didn't solve everything that night. We didn't promise to erase the past, but we did agree on one thing. We'd try again. Not like before. Not like pretending nothing happened. But like 2 people who had broken something real and still believed it was worth picking up the pieces. Later, she slid the ring back across the table toward me. But this time, she didn't say a word. She let me decide. And I did. I took it. Not because I forgot what she did, but because I finally remembered who we were, when we were still looking at each other, instead of through. We checked out the next morning. Together.